Hare Krishna. Okay, get started. I'll share my screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're continuing from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 18, and we're going to be looking at verses number 42 and 43. So just to give a little bit of context, so Parikshit Maharaj had put the dead snake around the neck of this rishi because he had wanted some water and the rishi had not responded. And so then his son had discovered this and he immediately cursed Maharaj Parikshit. And so then now the boy's father, the rishi who the dead snake was put on, he woke up from his trance and he had brushed off the snake, and actually he's not happy with his son. You know, one would think that maybe the father would feel like his son defended his honor, but in fact the father knew who Maharaj Parikshit is, and he is actually very upset with his son for doing this. So now we're going to hear the father kind of chastising his son and explaining to him what the repercussions will be because of the fact that his son did this to Maharaj Parikshit. So we'll read 42 and 43. Navaindrabir naradevam parakyam samatum arhasya vipakva bude yatte jasa durvi sahena gupta vindanti badranya baya praja. Translation: O my boy, your intelligence is immature and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best amongst human beings, is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. So no purport here from Srila Prabhupada, but we're hearing this sage explain how Maharaj Parikshit is as good as God. And this is a common type of mentality, especially in Vedic times, of looking at the rulers of society and comparing them to God. And Prabhupada will explain more about that in his next purport. So we can go to the next verse also. So text 43. Alakshyamane naradeva namni ratangapanav ayam angaloka tadahi chaura prachuro vinangshyatya araksyamano vivarutavakshanat. Translation: My dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves, who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. Purport. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the monarchical regime represents the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. The king is said to be the representative of the absolute personality of Godhead, because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. The battle of Kurukshetra was planned by the Lord to establish the real representative of the Lord, Maharaj Yudhishthira. An ideal king, thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service, with the martial spirit makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than the so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass of population. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues, and it is hinted herein that by abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. They are never happy in an overly advertised form of democracy. The result of such a kingless administration is described in the following verses. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Prabhupada is explaining more in depth his what is being referred to here when this sage is saying how the monarchy is the representative of the Lord, and what happens when that monarchy is taken down, especially a qualified monarch such as Maharaj Parikshit. What happens when such a ruler is vanquished? What will happen to the rest of society? And Prabhupada is definitely getting a little bit political here in the purport, but he's explaining exactly in detail what will happen. And he explains how the monarchy represents the Supreme Lord, and he says that the king represents God because he's supposed to be trained to acquire qualities such as God's or like God's in order to protect his kingdom. So that those can be qualities both of physical prowess, physical strength, as well as qualities of intelligence and all of these different desirable qualities that would make one a qualified ruler. And so Prabhupada is just expanding on this point, saying how the qualified ruler is qualified because they train to imbibe qualities like God's. And then he goes on to explain what happens when the qualified leader is lost, and how the entire society suffers. I mean, I'm just going to read this section again because Prabhupada is clearly very he really wants to strike this home. He says, an ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with the martial spirit makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than the so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass of population. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues. Very, very intense wording Prabhupada is using. I mean, this is related to this purport, but it's a sidebar. I don't mean to get necessarily political or anything, but this is something that I've never personally understood about our voting system, because like one of the main messages, especially around election time, is that everybody in America should go and vote because it's their right as a citizen. And I don't necessarily disagree that people should be involved in choosing their leaders, but what I don't like is that, what doesn't sit well with me is that everybody is being encouraged to vote. But first of all, are they educated about their rulers? Are they educated about the details of all of these candidates' positions? Most people are probably voting based off of one or two considerations that may or may not even be relevant to their ability to pass policies for society. And yet everyone is being encouraged very strongly to vote. So it's kind of, I feel like this is what Prabhupada is commenting on. He's saying that A bunch of unqualified citizens are casting votes on unqualified, uh, politicians. And I feel that, when an unqualified person is casting a vote for an unqualified person, that can only lead to some type of, you know, uh, undesirable situation in the end. So I completely understand Prabhupada's messaging here. Of course, the next question may be, but what are we supposed to do if we don't see a qualified monarch, right? It's not like we can just suddenly become very up in arms about the fact that, making one person the ruler of America or something like that. Obviously, that's probably off the table, but Prabhupada is just pointing out the flaws in this way of thinking that's going on today. And just going back to the original verse, he's helping to explain the thought process that this rishi is explaining to his son, which is exactly what will happen when you do get rid of a qualified ruler. Yeah, exactly. So one example that was just coming to my head, I mean, this is not the same situation as the ruler being forced to leave the throne, but I'm thinking of in that story where I forget, maybe it's Anga, but King Venu, he's the son of this qualified king, or Venu is the son of this qualified king, and this the king becomes completely disturbed by how terrible his son is as a human being. He tortures his 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 own peers as a child, and he's so disturbed that he leaves the kingdom. And so then the kingdom gets in complete disarray because their qualified ruler had left. And I just wanted to read this section of Bhagavad Gita again before I close, because this section also mirrors the same idea. In chapter 1, Arjuna's posing these different arguments as to why he shouldn't fight. And one of the arguments is that term Varna Sankara, which means that this unwanted progeny will come. So he says, with the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. So, of course, Krishna is going to talk Arjuna out of these different arguments that he poses, but Arjuna's train of thought is exactly like that of the sage explaining to his son how when you get rid of the ruler, this is the chain reaction of negative effects that come about as a result of your decision to do that when you get rid of a qualified ruler. So those are the two verses for today. That's all the points that I wanted to highlight. And I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions on this section, or any corrections on my part. Would be much appreciated. Okay. I think there are no comments today. That's totally fine. So we can end here. Thank you all so much for joining. Hare Krishna.